they tend to suggest that veganism is about other animals only, like this.
Let's get one thing straight here. Veganism is not about humans. Do you understand that? Veganism is not about people. Veganism is about nothing but non-humans. Animals.
Okay, now, sorry, that's wrong. And I think that's what a lot of people in the movement want veganism to be, but that's not what veganism is. Hey, Earthlings! I haven't done one of these for a while. This is Roger and Neville, the VIP van. And we're still in lockdown, obviously. But we've been doing a bit of sanctuary work. Still got a few other animals to rescue. A lot of birds still being injured, etc. I wanted to revisit this issue of focus and scope for this one, and you know, it seems to be something that's still causing some confusion. There's still an argument about, you know, the other animals deserve a movement dedicated just to themselves. And well, yeah, the vegan movement, the animal rights movement, that's it. It's just that that's not the entire scope of it, that's all. It is the focus of it, so they do have that movement. You know, focus and scope is not that difficult to understand. It's just the fact that we focus as an animal rights movement, as a vegan-based, justice-based movement, on human relations with other animals. That's the focus of our movement, and that's always been the focus. And although if we go back to the pioneers of the vegan social movement, it's always been the focus, even though they would make statements which are very almost human-centered. You knew that the focus was still on other animals. So in you know, The Surge of Freedom by Leslie Cross, the first sentence talks about humanity, but it's very clear from his position that it's a other animal focused position. It's just that that's not the scope. I don't quite understand why it's taking some people so long to understand that. I think there are some people who have the political reasons for not understanding it or not agreeing with it. They don't seem to have the wherewithal to argue against it, apart from making untrue statements. You know, making, for example, extracting a single sentence from the extensive writings of Leslie Cross and saying that's the definition of veganism, for example, which is, well, that's just juvenile. I mean, it's a silly thing to do. You know, but there's no need for it. The focus of our movement has always been on the other animals. You know, they're suggesting that there isn't a movement. You know, that the human elements of the vegan animal rights movement are taking away from what's needed to be a movement which is entirely dedicated to other animals, as though the focus of it is not enough, as though if you're to take a pro-intersectional stance, you've got to do everything else. That's not what it means. It's never meant that. It just means that you don't screw up other justice movements by what you do, and you demand that they do the same to you, in the same way as we want to demand of other justice movements that they take speciesism seriously. But we can't expect them to do that if we are seen to be fast and loose about issues surrounding race or class or gender and sex. We can't do that. It's kind of obvious to me. It's, as I said, I'm not quite sure why the issue of focus and scope doesn't resolve this problem that seems to have arisen, which almost seems to be manufactured for some reason, because it's almost like a problem that doesn't really exist. The focus of our movement is on other animals, always has been, but that's not the scope. It's as simple as that, and that's reflected in everyone's writing. I mean, if you go to animal rights theory like Tom Reagan in 1983, where he says that the animal rights movement is a part of and not opposed to the human rights movement, it doesn't mean that we've got to drop everything and become exclusive human rights advocates. There's nothing wrong with staying focused on the other animals. It's just that you do that in a contextual way and a respectful way in relation to other movements. That's all it means. You know, there's almost been a manufactured problem, and the solution is thinking about focus and scope. You know, I don't know. I mean, the only thing I can conclude is that some people have a political reason for problematizing this issue. The animals need, and by which they mean the other animals need, their own movement. The other animals have their own movement. I've been in it for more than 40 years. I've been fighting for other animals for more than 40 years, before a lot of these people were even born, let alone in the movement. You know, they've been vegan for a few years, and they're trying to rewrite the values of the movement because the animals need their own movement. The animals have got their own movement. It's called the vegan animal rights movement. It's just that that's not the full scope of it. That's all it is. You know, don't raise a problem, create a problem that's not even there. You know, and make it your platform. You know, we stand for the animals. We're the only ones that do it. This is a lonely place to be. This is untrue, folks. You know, most animal advocates that I've ever known have always focused on human relationships with other animals, but they've understood that that's not the full scope of the movement. And it doesn't mean you've got to be diverted anywhere. It doesn't mean you've got to go to every human rights event. It doesn't mean you've got to choose human rights over other animal rights, which doesn't even make any sense in the first place. All this manufactured problem is being created out of nowhere, doesn't even exist, and kind of never has until recently. You know, where does it come from? Why does it even exist? It's kind of like it's not even there, and yet it becomes a big talking point in the movement. It doesn't make any sense, really. You know, what can I say? The movement is focused on other animals, always has been. It's just that that's not the scope. Why is that so hard to, you know, tell me in the comments? Why is that hard to get your head around? Because it seems to me to be fairly straightforward and simple. We have a movement which is focused, as most movements are, on, you know, a thing or set of things, but that's not necessarily the focus when you look at the overarching values. That's all that's been said. Anyway, look after yourself in these strange times, people, and I'll see you again.